The sound of bone meeting flesh has a particular quality that cuts through everything else. In the crowded coffee shop just beyond Fort Bennying's gates, that sound turned 43 conversations into absolute silence. She never saw it coming. One moment, the young woman was politely but firmly telling Staff Sergeant Derek Coleman to leave her alone. The next, his open palm connected with her face with enough force to send her sideways off her chair. Her head caught the table corner on the way down. The crack of impact, the spray of blood, the collective gasp of witnesses frozen in disbelief. Coleman stood over her, chest heaving, fists still clenched. Around him, the coffee shop had transformed into something else entirely. Two young privates found courage they didn't know they possessed, grabbing Coleman's arms and hauling him backward as he unleashed a stream of profanity that made the older patrons flinch. The shop owner's hands trembled as she dialed base security. A retired sergeant stood up, phone already recording, documenting everything. But it was the woman on the floor who commanded the room's attention. Blood ran down her face from the cut above her eye, but her hands remained steady. Her phone was still clutched in her palm, still recording, the red light blinking like a heartbeat. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She simply stayed there, documenting her own assault with the clinical precision of someone who understood exactly what she was doing and why it mattered. Coleman actually laughed. Even restrained by two men half afraid of him, even with blood on his hands and 40 witnesses watching, he laughed, because he'd been here before. 3 formal complaints in 8 years, and each one had evaporated like morning dew. His company commander would handle it. They always did. A stern talking to, maybe some extra duty, and then back to business as usual. The system protected men like him. It always had. Base security rolled up fast, all efficiency and protocols. They separated the parties, took statements, photographed injuries. Coleman maintained his smirk even as they guided him into their vehicle. Just another Tuesday. Just another complaint that would disappear into the bureaucratic void. The woman finally accepted help standing, refused the ambulance, but insisted with quiet intensity that every statement be documented, every witness identified, every detail recorded. Something in her voice made the young security officers handle their paperwork with unusual care, though they couldn't explain why. 17 minutes later, 3 black SUVs arrived at the base commander's office like storm clouds rolling in. 3 generals emerged in synchronized precision, their combined 9 stars representing more power than Fort Benning typically saw in a single afternoon. General Patricia Morrison led them, her 3-star insignia catching the sun, her expression carved from granite and fury. The base commander, a colonel who'd been checking his golf clubs, suddenly found himself standing at rigid attention while 3 generals systematically dismantled his afternoon, his assumptions, and potentially his career. Within an hour, Fort Benning was locked down. No one in, no one out, no explanations offered. The generals tore through files like avenging angels. Every complaint related to Coleman, every buried report, every mysteriously disappeared incident. They pulled records on his chain of command, tracking patterns of protection and willful blindness that stretched back years. The colonel watched his carefully constructed world unravel in real time. Because the young woman Coleman had struck wasn't some random civilian. She was Captain Jennifer Morrison, currently on leave recovering from injuries sustained during a classified operation in Eastern Europe. She was also General Morrison's daughter, though she'd spent her entire military career refusing to trade on that connection, earning every rank and assignment through her own merit and blood. Jennifer had been in that coffee shop for a reason. Her laptop contained her master's thesis on military justice, specifically researching how sexual assault and harassment complaints disappeared within the system. Her work was personal, driven by stories from fellow service women, by patterns she'd recognized, by a broken system she'd sworn to fix. She'd been hunting predators in her own way, documenting a system that protected them. Coleman's assault had been his catastrophic miscalculation. Jennifer's recording, combined with the avalanche of witness statements and the general's investigation, pulled the thread that unraveled everything. They discovered a network, protected predators, commanders who buried complaints to maintain promotion statistics, a culture that had allowed men like Coleman to operate with impunity, confident that rank and connections made them untouchable. By evening, Coleman sat in custody facing both military and civilian charges. His smirk had finally died. His company commander was relieved of duty, escorted out by military police. The battalion commander was under investigation. And something else happened. 7 other soldiers, watching from the shadows, came forward. 7 voices that had been silenced by fear suddenly found the courage to speak because someone was finally, actually listening. General Morrison stood beside her daughter in the base hospital that evening, watching medics stitch the cut above Jennifer's eye. Jennifer hadn't wanted this. Hadn't wanted to use her mother's rank, hadn't wanted special treatment. She tried to handle everything through proper channels, the way any other soldier would have to. But her mother taught her something else that day. That sometimes rank exists not for privilege but for protection. Not for personal advancement, but for demolishing broken systems that destroy good people. The lockdown lasted 3 days. In that time, Fort Benning transformed. New leadership, new protocols, new understanding that untouchable was a myth, that every complaint mattered, that the daughter of a general and the newest private deserved identical protection, identical justice, identical respect. When Coleman's SUV had arrived at the detention facility, his smirk had finally vanished. He'd learned too late what everyone should have taught him years earlier, that actions have consequences, that some lines should never be crossed, that protection only lasts until it doesn't. The coffee shop reopened 4 days later. The table where Jennifer fell was gone, replaced with something new, but the memory remained. 43 people had witnessed what happened when courage met consequence, when documentation met determination, when a broken system finally faced someone with the power and will to fix it. The privates who'd restrained Coleman received commendations. The witnesses who'd recorded and testified received thanks. And Captain Jennifer Morrison returned to her thesis with 43 new sources, a scar above her eye, and proof that speaking up could matter if the right people were finally willing to listen.